Hi everyone, it's Raina. So this video is for narcissism and earth signs. This is a part of a series that I have been doing, and it's been a lot of fun to do this, and the response indicates that narcissism is rampant in terms of many people being victims of it. And what I discovered when I was trying to decide how I was going to approach this is that it made sense to group these videos by elements because there are some common traits that each element exhibits when it comes to how they express their narcissism. The term narcissist or narcissism is very loose with me because I am not a trained professional in psychology or anything like that. So I'm just going by what I have read and the videos that I've watched and what is described as these traits. It could be borderline personality too. Anything that is toxic to you and you feel this sense of maybe oppression being involved in this relationship and wanting to get out or wanting it to stop. Maybe you care about this person, but you don't like a lot of their tendencies. And their tendencies seem to make you feel bad. Or I don't like to say make you, like you have no control over it. These people rub you the wrong way, or this person. And so I've already done the water and the fire signs. And those were kind of easy because they kind of are the classic narcissists as far as I'm concerned, using emotional manipulation or using drama, or what else can I say, like belittling other people. I think the fire signs are really masters at that. But now we're talking about earth energy, which tends to be more practical and less ego-oriented. And I really feel like narcissism is a disorder of the ego. I don't think that being egoless is possible or desirable. I think we all should have a sense of self and a sense of being different than the person next to us. Some people really seem to dislike being different from others, that they want to feel this sense of unity. But I don't think it's either or. I think that we can be at one and yet apart at the same time. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And when it comes to issues involving individuality, there's nothing wrong with standing out and being who you came here to be. It's when it becomes an excessive need that the problems arise. So with earth signs, that need to stand out is not there. But remember that we're a combination of influences. So you can have a sun in an earth sign. Maybe you have the moon in Leo. Maybe you have Cancer rising. And this changes things up, and this may make you act like that instead of your sun sign because it overpowers your sun sign. I think it's safe to say that narcissism is in large part an attempt to have control over one's life in as great a way as possible, as extensive a way as possible. And in addition to that, the need to feed off of another person's energy because the narcissist feels hollow inside. But I think it's all on a spectrum. I don't think everyone has the same intensity of need and the same drive in the same direction. And I think with the earth signs, the control becomes more of a factor. And it's very interesting because there's a great YouTube channel on narcissism by this man, and his channel is called Narcissist Survivor. And I recommend him. He's got this wonderful New York accent, and he's just got like this very caring demeanor, and he's very down to earth. And he has a video about the narcissist and money that I recommend. Again, his channel is called Narcissist Survivor. And he was talking about how a lot of narcissists have money. And I thought that was kind of humorous, because I can totally see why that would be the case. Because again, the power comes in. At a very young age, these people, if they go through a trauma, they realize that power, being powerful, it becomes like super important to them. But they don't realize that no amount of worldly power can prevent certain things from happening. For instance, if somebody has trauma from a death of a parent, and it's very confusing to them and very upsetting, and they can't make sense of it, and they think, when I grow up, I'm going to make so much money that I can control everyone around me with my money, or I can make sure that things don't happen that are unexpected. Well, that's not true. There's nothing that you can do to ultimately control every aspect of your life. And you have to be okay with that. If you are nervous at the prospect of not knowing everything, that can certainly lead to an excessive need for control. And money is that tangible source of control. There's so many ways that people control others through money, isn't there? When we talk about parents and children, it can start from a very young age, where I remember growing up and getting an allowance. But there were some kids who would get money for getting A's on their report card. I don't remember if when I was a kid that was very common, though. That might have been a little bit after my elementary school years, or maybe I just read about it being a thing. And I always remember not liking that. There are I think there are probably a split on whether or not that's injurious or beneficial to a child to be given a financial incentive for doing well in school. And I'm sure there are some psychologists that would say that it's actually healthy, that's what the work world is about, is that you perform and you get paid for it, and that this is no different. And even doing your chores, you get rewarded for the work that you do. So why should it be different for your education and your academic performance? Why is that considered bribery? And there are other people who say a child doesn't have any job. The only thing they have to do is go to school. So they should do that without expecting any money in return. So I can see both points of view. But let's look at it from the perspective of the parent who needs the child to be academically successful. One of the things that is very harmful to children is when they feel like they are not loved unless they perform, unless they succeed. So whether it's, training for a sport that they may not really want to do, but their parent wants them to be great at basketball or great at football or be an Olympic gymnast, or being in show business, being in beauty pageants, the stage mother stereotype of wanting the child to be a performing seal. I call it the performing seal syndrome, where the tangible proof of the parent's worth is present in what their child does. I don't think that earth signs are the ones that are primarily doing this, but they may use money as a carrot to lure the child into achievement, especially with academic matters, in order so that they can have the bragging rights of saying, oh, my child is on the honor roll for the, 5th year in a row or something. Another area that money comes into play for power is in marriages or, committed partnerships. Sometimes, let's look at a sign like Virgo, because I was writing some things down, and I think that Virgos are probably one of the least likely to be narcissists, if you want to know the truth, because there's a lack of ego, and there's also a very modest type of mentality. I think if you can say anything negative about Virgos, is that they may be like incredible nags, excessively critical of their partner, but I don't see them as being the type to really crave control. But remember, I'm just talking about the sign of Virgo. There are other influences that may kind of affect this. So, for instance, if a Virgo person is married to somebody else who is more of a spendthrift, the Virgo person may try to control the other person's spending habits and may really be incensed at the way the other person handles money. Money is a very big bone of contention in relationships. And it's not that there's no truth to the fact that some people are more capable at handling money than others. But we're talking about control issues and how do people feel comfortable. And when somebody controls the purse strings, that's when things get really tricky, because you might have one person who, for instance, is staying at home and raising the children. Could be the man, could be the woman, and the other person is working. And if they might feel resentful in some way that this person gets to stay home, and they equate it with, just sitting there and eating bonbons. And it's like they want the other person to have to deal with the same kind of frustrations that they have to deal with, and comparing their life having to work outside of the home to the other person's. And in doing so, then they really become controlling with the money and give them an allowance, but they are, as I said, controlling those purse strings. And so when we look at how these issues, these material issues, if you will, affect relationships and how people try to obtain power through money, it can be by being the one who lures people with money. I have money. I'm talking about like the person who is the narcissist, and kind of flaunting it and luring people who are attracted to it, or maybe who are desperate for money, so that they will cooperate with this person within the relationship. But it's really like selling their soul. So you can have, this is what is so interesting. As I was compiling this information and feeling very confused about earth signs and narcissism, because I think it's the least pronounced with earth signs. Some of you can comment down below if you think that there are plenty of earth sign narcissists. But I really feel that earth signs lack the ego necessary to be full-blown narcissists for the most part, but that doesn't stop some of them from doing so. I do feel that Virgo is probably one of the least likely to be narcissists, unless it's a covert narcissist. Being too servile, an enabler, trying to get into the good graces of someone as a form of control by being there for them and almost allowing that other person's bad behavior so that they can have the control over that individual. I don't even know if that would qualify as true narcissism. But I wanted to start with Taurus because the other thing that we have to talk about is sexuality, which is another aspect of the earth energy. When you think about the Tarot, the Pentacles relates to both money, work, and the body, which includes health and sexuality. Taurus is one of those signs that I consider one of the most sensual signs. But all earth signs, to one degree or another, are sensual because they are earth signs and they are dealing with the five senses. With Taurus, Taurus is a fixed earth sign. So Taurus is associated with possessiveness. And it rules the second house in astrology of the money that a person earns, so earned income, as well as their possessions. And Taurus, as a sign, sometimes gets accused of being possessive in love relationships. And this is because they consider their partner an extension of their possessions, where you belong to me the way my car belongs to me. And when somebody starts to think like that, that can lead to a lot of problems because they objectify people. And sexually, objectification occurs quite often as well. We know that, where people use others sexually because they are attracted to them, but there's not that whole person that they are really attracted to. They are really attracted to just one component. And even sometimes you will find people who say, oh, that person has a nice rack, or, something like that. And they are objectifying the person even more so to one body part. So it can get very, very specific. And that type of mentality can lead to the narcissist using sexuality to get what they want, or on the other end, craving sexuality as the proof of their superiority. So is it safe to say that a womanizer, and whatever the feminine equivalent of that is a narcissist? That all womanizers are narcissists? I think that's a pretty fair statement. I think that somebody who goes through sexual relationships and they kind of dispose of these people and leave a trail of heartbreak behind them do not have that kind of emotional core that prevents them from doing such a thing. So one of the key traits of narcissism is a lack of empathy. And so the perfect example is when someone uses another person sexually and doesn't seem to care when that person is hurt by the relationship breaking up, or this person having another affair, having multiple affairs. They don't care. They don't have it within them to care. And when their partner is having an affair, that's when they can come and become, they can come alive with a sense of outrage, or it could even seem like passion to their partner because their possession is being threatened. But it's not a mutual thing. They have every ability to cheat on their partner and not care and not feel a sense of guilt, remorse. And yet when their partner is doing something that is just beyond the pale. So it's kind of like a one-way street, even sometimes with that. With Taurus, again, it's going to be, I was talking about womanizing in a general sense, not just with Taurus. With Taurus, there can either be that sense of wanting to be, you know, if the person needs sex almost in an addictive way to kind of affirm their desirability in life, and if they lack that empathy and maybe even have a hollowness emotionally, which can again occur due to severe trauma, they can use sexuality as an illusion, as a substitute for true intimacy. And that can also lead to compulsive sexual behaviors and multiple affairs, and that sense of control over a partner by using one's sexuality. With women, a lot of times, I even wrote down here the Empress reversed in the tarot, where the Empress card is connected to Venus, and Venus rules Taurus. It also rules Libra. But when a woman uses her femininity, her feminine wiles, to get what she wants, and what she wants is typically related to what a gold digger wants. And it really can be more than that. It's not just about money. It can be about status. And again, that's a form of objectification, where you don't see a person, you see an open wallet. And what can we say about that type of person? They're manipulative. Somebody who is a gold digger, a materialist, gone amok, will use sexuality, they will use flattery, they will say, I love you, in order to get the cold hard cash. But think about it this way. The person who is doling out that cash, who is the narcissist in that situation? Can there be two narcissists who attract one another? I think in this particular scenario, that is exactly what happens. Think about that movie, The War of the Roses, and Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas, wasn't it? And how they had such a nasty divorce. And the movie just became so over the top at the end. That I actually liked the movie until it just became such like slapstick almost. And they were like throwing things at each other. I can't remember, it was so long ago. But the point is that this is the kind of thing, when you get a person who is very materialistic, everything becomes dollars and cents to them. And they will get really pissed off if somebody else is trying to take things from them, where they feel that another person, like in a divorce, took a possession that they felt that they didn't deserve, and they become so emotionally connected to these things that it's like, to me, it's over the top. It's not. They're putting these material possessions, they're giving too much importance to them. And that's because they are a substitute for love, really, if you think about it. And that's what's so sad about it, is that they cannot love because they don't have anything inside. They're hollow. They lack empathy. They lack emotions. And so instead of just trying to find themselves, they are like reaching out and trying to grab anything that they can. In our society, money is so coveted, or possessions, but nice things are so coveted that it's almost like a cheap way of trying to gain a sense of importance or even love from admiration from another person. Just as using one's sexuality in such a way is kind of like a lazy, cheap way of doing that. But, when people are narcissists, they don't have the ability to be introspective, to look within. Everything becomes externalized. And that's why other people become so important for their supply. They cannot obtain that sense of themselves from within themselves. So even like these material objects, this is a substitute for personal power by having it in the outer world. Status symbols, that is a substitute for true self-esteem. It's like you're buying your self-esteem. But it does take two to tango, and I think that sometimes these narcissists with money attract the gold digger, who is a narcissist just as much as that person. And they can even go into the relationship, and it's like a business agreement where they say, okay, and they may never even utter one word about this, but it's implied that you be my arm candy. You look sexy. You make me look like I'm successful, and I will have an open wallet for you. Now, that kind of relationship, if both people are down for it, well, maybe that's okay for them. But think about it in terms of love. What often, I think, happens in those types of relationships, and we find out in Hollywood when these kinds of arrangements seem to be par for the course, is that the person or both parties realize that love is real and important, especially as we age. When people are younger, they tend to be cockier, and they can have this belief in, being like all powerful. And vulnerability can set in as you get older, and things start to not seem as much a done deal. That you're not necessarily, your career even can seem like, I'm not saying every type of career, but a lot of careers, it's like there may be this kind of a peak age when a person has power, and then it kind of starts to diminish. I think this is especially true when you work for other people. I think when you work for yourself, it's not true, because you call the shots, and you can determine when you kind of change your approach and how you do things. But in terms of working for somebody else, there's a hierarchy, there's a pecking order. And they often will look at people who are of a certain age as being kind of over the hill, and not give them the respect that they deserve. And that makes people feel vulnerable. Whereas before they might have felt on top of the world, and that they were really a very important player in their company, if you will. And a narcissist who works for another person can suddenly get knocked down a peg, and that can make them even more controlling, because they know that they can't derive their supply from the work that they do, because they have lost that power, even if it's just a little bit. So they may try to get it in other areas, and one of those areas is through their finances, through having a lot of money. Oh, I wanted to say something too, because with talking about money, because sometimes what narcissists will do is they will use their interactions with others in terms of like when they go and buy something or go to a restaurant as a way to control the situation. And I just want to say that I'm kind of bringing up money and narcissism by using the earth signs. I will in a minute get to each earth sign and say how I think that they may express their narcissistic traits. But quite frankly, I do feel that the earth signs are not as prone to narcissism as other signs, if you want to talk about the traits in general. So maybe that's why it's kind of hard to really talk about them specifically. But in terms of money and narcissism, which I can make this about as well, and I have made it about it, I've even noticed this myself, that sometimes people think that if they buy a service from you that they get to push you around and they get to tell you what to do. And I'm like the kind of person, I just return people's money because it's not about that. You see, I'm not a slave to money. And some people are, and they think everybody else is. And that is kind of a funny thing. And so this is one of the areas where if you've ever worked worked retail, you know what I mean. You feel my pain. Or maybe in a service industry, you know that there are people who feel powerless in their lives, and they use their interactions as being a customer as a way to kind of lord their power over others, who are really vulnerable in the sense that if you're working for a company that says the customer is always right, you can get in trouble if you even think of defending yourself or what have you. And so this is another way that people use money to try to control situations. They bark out orders at restaurants. They ask to speak to the manager and they make a big scene and they act like they've just been so insulted. Sometimes they read into things that aren't there because of their own insecurities. I mean, when I worked in a health food store for several years, and I wasn't even that young. I was in my early 30s at the time. And I'll tell you, when I got done with that job, I really thought that most people they've got some kind of mental illness. And I'm not joking. I mean, I really thought that there were a lot of people who have mental problems who might hide that fact, or let's just say emotional problems. They might hide that fact in their everyday encounters, but then the mask comes down when they're in these situations where they're not on, where they're not trying to impress other people, kind of behind the scenes, and they treat people that they perceive as lower than them on the food chain as crap. And so these kinds of behaviors are injurious to the person who is trying to just pay their rent or put food on the table. And these people know it. They know that they have this person in a position where they can control. And they use, again, energy vampires, using the vulnerability of other people, the position, using the abuse of power, of having the money and being the customer as an excuse to abuse others. As far as the different signs with Taurus, I've already kind of covered this. I said using sexuality, being a gold digger, and using your sexuality to get monetary gain. With Virgo, being that indispensable servant who is kind of acting like they are obedient and an enabler, but they're doing it in order to keep that person, sometimes maybe even keeping a person weak. They might not know that they're doing this on a conscious level, but they're doing it for control purposes because they are afraid if the person is too independent and too strong that they won't be with them and they won't need them. With Virgos, there's a strong need to be needed. So they may try to do for others what they should be doing for themselves in order to keep them dependent, okay? With Capricorn, I think that we can look at the parent-child relationship. A Capricorn parent oftentimes is striving to, Capricorn itself is a sign that is striving to always better themselves. And they are seeking status. They're seeking that 10th house recognition of their achievements. And they are always climbing the ladder of success and things like that. Well, they are looking to partners who can enhance that image. So with Capricorn, it's not necessarily that they have this huge ego that needs to be stroked. It's more of trying to validate themselves and doing and looking to other people as appendages for that validation. So the child can be used as a symbol of the parent's validation. And what happens is that the child a lot of times doesn't feel unconditionally loved. If the child doesn't make the honor roll, if they don't give the parent bragging rights, the Capricorn parent, they can be seen as a failure. And that can indicate a sense of the child feeling that they are not loved for who they are. And that's very painful. And sometimes with the Capricorn, there is no pleasing them. They're very harsh, I'm saying the narcissistic Capricorn, because Capricorn is ruled by Saturn, and Saturn can be very demanding. And so it could never be good enough. That's another thing with Virgo, too, the perfectionist, where the partner or the child never feels like they are good enough in the eyes of the narcissist. With Capricorn too, looking for a status symbol spouse. So again, being that trophy wife, or even being a sugar mama, where the Capricorn woman who is wealthy seeks a younger partner who she can feel like she still has it, and she doles out the money and gets that kind of attention from a younger man. And yet, is that man faithful to her? Or is he just there to stroke her ego and to give her, hot sex? And then he's really, maybe he has a more romantic relationship with somebody closer to his age. I mean, there's always the possibility that you have a younger man who's interested in older women. Actually, the sign of Capricorn does favor old age. So whether it be a man or a woman, they tend to be attracted to older people. And they're looking for that guidance too, though. They're looking for kind of that, they respect their elders, and they're looking for help. I mean, even Capricorns, sometimes they're looking for mentors, somebody that can help them to become more successful themselves. And so this may translate into getting into a kind of relationship with somebody who's older, but who also provides some of the benefits of living in a nice area, having that sense of a higher station in life than, where they have started. And the bottom line with all of this and how it relates to money is that a narcissist doesn't feel powerful within themselves. So they're looking for people, places, and things that will give them that sense of superiority, of specialness. I think, we don't talk enough about specialness and narcissism. Everyone has special qualities. Everyone has, talents. Everyone does. And the narcissist doesn't believe that. They think that they are better than other people. And with the earth signs, they tend to use as proof of their superiority or their specialness material objects. And the sad thing about it is that what they might attract to them are people who are attracted to the objects that they can provide and not to this person. And so everyone, I think, at the end of the day is really looking for love. And when they don't know, when they're so out of touch with who they are, that they don't realize that they have been deprived of love, they prefer looking for things that they can hold in their hand, tangible things, because they feel that those things are more important than, they might scoff at the notion of love, actually. They may think that love is pie in the sky and that the real things that are important in life are money, financial security. And you will see that a lot of times when these people get divorced and they complain about their divorce to other people, they just go into the minutia of the things that the other person took from them, and they're just so obsessed with these objects. And again, it's like, what are our lives about at the end of the day? The idea that someone could get that caught up in these things that they are willing to obsess about them, and that they come in between them and another person. I just think that is so tragic, and it's kind of indicative of, I think, a lack of spirituality, where the material becomes everything to someone, and they love, which you can't buy, becomes something that is like not given any kind of value in life. But truth be told, these people cannot really feel. So it works out really well for them to be materialistic, because that's about the only thing that moves them are these things, and how their lives are connected to it, and the importance they place on it. So what can you do? Well, one of the things that you can do is not be controlled by money. I wanted to say about wills with parents, who use the will. Or if you come from a wealthy family with trust funds, usually it's going to be more like wills. I mean, trust funds, you have to probably be born into a very wealthy family to get those. But I don't know. Maybe it's not that big. Maybe it's more common than I know. But I know, like wills, a lot of games are played around wills sometimes to get people to do their bidding and to kind of move the chess pieces on the board. So not falling for the okie doke when it comes to that. Not allowing people to manipulate you financially. So if you have any kind of relationship, be it with a spouse or a parent, or even with a child who is using guilt to try to get you to give them money as an adult when they need to be taking care of themselves, and they don't want to take care of themselves, and they're trying to guilt the parent. Now, if you have in the past been using money to control them and then you pull the plug, then it's not fair to expect the child to just get with the program right away. I'm talking about when they just are like that in general, and they, grifters, anybody who's a grifter, or anybody who is trying to control others with their purse strings. You don't have to play along with that. The only time when people play along with it is when they have tendencies towards greed themselves. And they want that. So that is a very strong lure to them, which they are willing to take as their... as they're willing to take the bait, and that's on you if you do that. But if you don't allow other people to manipulate you, then there's nothing there. No one can manipulate you without your agreement. And if somebody, you can tell when somebody has kind of like strings attached to the money that they're giving you, and you can say, no, thank you. That's very kind of you, but you don't want to kind of enter into that because you know that they're going to demand something from you. And it really always does come down to us and the choices that we make. So I hope you enjoyed this, and take care. Bye.